morning, everybody. I hope we are finding everybody healthy and well this morning. Welcome to another Football Transfer Forum webinar. And Tony, we've made it to September. I saw something great on the internet this week, and it said, "Welcome to September. You've reached level 9 of Jumanji."
What?
A sort of testament to how bad 2020 has been. Yeah,
I know.
So it's been an unbelievable year. But here we are. Scottish football, the Premiership is back, and we're obviously only a few weeks back away from the domestic game here in England. Stein, how are you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, we did our first webinar. It was Guy's fault, actually. He suggested doing a webinar. So we did our webinar on the 1st of May, which was when the Football Transfer Forum was supposed to be a live event. And we were just going to do the one, and it sort of went all right. So I think this is our 6th or something crazy like that. So it's like somebody sort of said, you've pivoted. Somebody used the word pivoted. And I was like, well, we just made it up as we went along.
Flatten the curve.
Something like that. I'm not great with these buzzwords. So yeah. So here we are, another webinar. Happy days.
Good stuff. And Guy, how are you?
Yeah, great. I'll take the blame for starting the webinars, I suppose, but I thought it was a great way of putting ourselves across to people, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. I think we've had some great guests on. Obviously, Chris is joining us today, so welcome to Chris as well. But no, I've had a good week. It's starting to get busier. Games are starting to happen. Now it's crunch time for a lot of these managers that have got the players in, and they're looking around for, obviously, particularly my area, loans and lastminute.com sort of deals to get over the line before the season starts, because the Cup's beginning, I suppose, majority this weekend with the EFL trophy. And I know it started a little bit last time, but this week's going to be a real big kick on. So let's see where that goes, and let's see where these managers start shaking after a few games.
Absolutely. Guy, I introduced the guests, right?
Sorry, mate. Yeah. Cut in. I've just cut in there.
You got a new job, Guy. If you're cheaper than Ryan,
I'm getting bigger and bigger.
We can talk about it afterwards. Anyways, sorry, Ryan. Sorry.
I very much doubt he's cheaper than me. But absolutely, we've had some great guests, and today is no exception. And we're really grateful to welcome Chris Brass, most recently with Wigan, onto the webinar today. Chris, how are you?
Good. Certainly been eventful. I think that's what my pandemic's been. So yeah, I think we'll indulge in that a little bit more in depth now.
Absolutely great to see you. Well, we've got a sort of jam-packed 90 minutes as always. There's already been a comment through, Tony, about how people are relieved that my beard has grown back, which I'm going to take as a compliment.
Well, you had your lockdown hair, which was a problem, and then you had it cut, and then in the next webinar, somebody said, you need to get your hair cut after lockdown, and you'd already had it cut. So
that's
right.
Well, it's I'm still not over that comment, to be honest.
I'm not sure. I've just seen a little clip of Chris's hair back in the day there, and I'm not sure he's going to be happy with you, Ryan. I'm not sure.
Well, this is we like to be nostalgic, don't we? We like to be nostalgic. But let's crack on. As I say, we've got a busy 90 minutes ahead. As always, for the people tuning in, if you've got a comment or a question, please pop it either in the chat or the Q&A section, and I will get through as many as possible over the next 90 minutes. So we're going to be speaking in depth with Chris, not only about his career and his most recent roles, but also his sort of wider perspective and philosophy around scouting and recruitment. Obviously, Chris's most recent club, Wigan, have been heavily in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons in recent weeks, and hopefully we're going to have some really great insight into that over the next half an hour or so. Then, as always, we're gonna speak to one of our partners at the Football Transfer Forum, and absolutely delighted this morning that we're going to be joined by Jesper from SciSports. Jesper's actually based at the Dutch national team training centre today. They've got a couple of really tough games coming up against Poland and Italy. I think they're both in the Nations League. So great to, maybe, we might have Georgie Wijnaldum in the background. Who else, Tony? Who's your big Dutch favourite? It's Virgil van Dijk.
It's got to be Van Dijk, hasn't it, really? It's got to be
Van Dijk, yeah.
I think Wijnaldum and Van Dijk is that axis at Liverpool. I think those are the two key men for Liverpool, never mind the Dutch national team. I love the way they interact with each other. Them two, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
So we can't promise an appearance from them, but maybe Jesper can work his magic, and then we'll all have a discussion as a panel. And this month we're gonna be focusing on player pathways, and that's going to be led by Guy, who's going to be discussing what the philosophy and structure and process is at Leicester to get young players through the process and into the first team. And as promised, we will get through as many of your questions as possible at the end, and I'm sure there's going to be absolutely loads. But time is always against us, so I'm going to press on. And as I say, Chris, absolutely great for you to be with us. I always like to pick a picture from the past when we have a guest here. We had Rob Scott on last month, and I got him in what is possibly one of the worst ever football strips ever generated. I think this is from your time at York, and obviously you've got a great affection for the club there, and they've obviously fell on hard times in recent years, but moving into a new stadium this year, are you still in touch with some of the people there?
Yeah, it was challenging to say the least. Certainly the time there, no more so than the hairdresser, but it's yeah. I think that was probably the first time that I started looking into even the recruitment aspect, because you become a player manager just on the eve of my 26th birthday. And it was ironically during troubled times. It was the ITV digital period. It kind of fallen upon us, and that was the reasoning. And it was two for the price of one, so to speak. And it was a real insight into just what happens and how you go. And I think as a player, you're as Guy will probably allude to, you're a very selfish beast. You worry about yourself. You make sure everything's right. Yeah, there's captain responsibilities, and you'll take them, but ultimately it's about yourself, and that was the biggest challenge. Day one was kind of, right, I'm not just worrying about me. You turn around and you're worrying about another 20 people. And 20 odd years ago, you weren't just the manager. You were the recruitment. You were the physio. I alluded to Tony that you were the managed guidance, which I don't know whether I was a master in that, but it was. It's everything, and you have to wear all these hats. And I think that was the first time that you understand you need help, and you need specialists in certain areas. And I think as times evolved, there still will be challenges along the way, but I think it's that key understanding of what you need in order to not run a football club, but also what help and support mechanisms you need as a manager.
Yeah, Chris, not everybody tuning in today might be aware of your own progression. So, do you mind just taking us sort of on, what your journey was, sort of briefly, in terms of first taking that role at York, right the way through to your most recent role at Wigan? Yeah,
so initially was the playing career. So I had just over 10 years at Burnley before moving on to York. And then obviously went into the player manager capacity then. Continued to play and finished my career at Bury, where I then went on to become the academy manager, and then played sort of semi-pro alongside that. And once the playing career had finished, I kind of progressed to initially as the caretaker manager, got a feel for the first team environment, teamed up with Alan Neil at Bury for a number of years, and we kind of followed each other through Scunthorpe, Torquay, and then I went back to Bury with Dave Flitcroft as his assistant manager. Then I stepped away from the grass and made a sort of conscious decision that I'd want to look into the other side and the support mechanism, so to speak, at Bury, and from that it evolved. I continued in the recruitment at Burnley, and then the opportunity arose at Wigan, where again it was a different aspect, but by the end of it, the key to it all is recruitment, and such a big part of football that, as I say, as it's evolved, I think the first insight was, as I alluded to, at York, you understand, you start seeing things. I've always enjoyed seeing how people are testing, what makes him special, why is that, trying to get inside and a little bit deeper, and you quickly work it out. Who's got whether it's an area that's touched upon from the mental toughness side of things, or is it someone who does need different sort of strategies in order for them to progress? And I'm sure Guy will touch upon a few of those as we get further into the interview.
Yeah, Chris, obviously it's been an awful few weeks for not only the football club at Wigan, but obviously the staff as well. And obviously you've left, you've been relieved of your duties as well. To the extent that you're allowed to, can you just talk to us about, from your perspective, right at the coalface, what came about, when you realised something was not right, and obviously, the communication that you've had since?
I think that's we'll never get to the bottom of it. I think that's going to be the challenge. But certainly from our perspective as staff, it just come out of the blue. We were planning. The pandemic hit it. I think it hurt every single football club. There was concerns in every certain area. But we did everything that we felt was correct at the time, and for what was Wigan, sort of, yes, people were put on furlough, etc. There was nothing kind of alluding that this was going to happen. From a recruitment perspective, it was fantastic because you could all breathe. You had time with the manager, and via the Zoom, you were going through things. There was plenty of targets. We knew exactly where the squad was at the time, and we're actually quite in advanced talks with players, almost to the point where things were agreed for them to come in. So yeah, it was frustrating that we then come back playing that. I was travelling back from, I'd watched the game of QPR in the evening. We beat Stoke, thinking fantastic, we'd reached the magical number of 50 points. Spoke with the manager first thing in the morning, thinking great, we can now accelerate with all our plans, we can press ahead. From his perspective of making sure that the current squad were all happy and aligned, and then also we could be a bit more aggressive in respect of the targets, and to go from putting the phone down with him at 8:30 to being on the phone with an agent, and then actually being told that it's just come up on Sky, you've gone into admin. That was, as I say, it's almost earth shattering, because we just did not expect it. Didn't hear it. That was the first we heard.
So did you find out via the club that you were going into admin, or did you hear from an external source first?
No, it was external. I was on the phone to an agent. It was wow. I was working ultimately, and then, as I say, when you hear it, it's the relationship I had with him, and I said, "You're joking," and he went, "Well, all the years I've known you, Brassy, it's not something to joke about. Truly, it's on the banner on Sky." Carnage, obviously on telephones, everybody finds out, players, staff, everything, and then that uncertainty hits. And in respect of what happened following that, it was kind of a week later, decisions were made, and I was part of the 75 staff, and I think that's the bit that people don't understand, that the administration they've got a job to do, but it's very cold and harsh on people. And the pleasing thing is, I think you've seen the magnitude of Wigan and what's happened in recent weeks, with everybody coming together to save it from a fan's perspective. So that's pleasing that you yes, it's people, they haven't got the heartbeat.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what we want to get into today is is really try and get a sense of the good work that was going on at Wigan. You know, from a performances perspective, they were one of the informed teams in the Championship. It seems to have been really clicking. And for you guys to even be kind of where you were, given the resources that you've got against, obviously, what are some massive clubs in the Championship, it was great. So, you know, give us a little insight into, you obviously touched on it there, you'd reached that points total. But what were really the sort of structures and the processes that you felt were now in place that meant that, you know, the ship was going in the right direction?
I think the key was that even to stay within the Championship it was deemed as success, and there was always progression, and I think that you've got to doth your cap to the manager, really, because he's continually wanting to evolve himself. And it's an amalgamation of things. There's a lot of good stuff there, and everybody has a buy-in, and I think that's key. That certain relationships in key areas, from myself through to the manager through to the sports medicine, myself through to analysts, and then obviously a huge importance, which everybody's getting hit at the moment, your scouts, your actual foot soldiers who can't get into games right now. I think it was bringing it together, and what we decided to do was understand what we had in the building, and by that you've got to understand what the manager likes, what the philosophy is, where that goes through, and then you translate that into what the players are. And data is the buzzword at the moment, and certainly in recruitment. But we had a full understanding, and that was brought in from all areas. Whether it was Adam Smith bringing something from the analyst side, or the recruitment guy, analysts bringing in certain key metrics and making sure it was understood, and speaking the same language. And I think by language, I mean, Cookie affectionately would say, he likes players who can leg it, and then you've got to go to the other side of the spectrum and make sure that certain matrix is understood, that it's someone who can do relevant amount of sprints in the game, what the distances are, etc. Bringing that back and saying, right, I've got you a player who can leg it, and then he fits into what the philosophy in the system was. So we were on track. We knew where the pathways were. We knew that we had an unbelievable amount of talent within the academy that was coming through, and making sure that you didn't block their sort of way through. And the balance was very, very strong. We felt, certainly going into this window, that with a little bit of tweak and fine tuning and a couple of additions, not losing members of the squad, it was additions to strengthen it and challenge the people who were in there. That wouldn't have cost a great deal either. And we were conscious that because of the model, we brought in some younger, hungrier ones that we were actually able to sell on. So the model was, this is going to be the frustrating part, because I genuinely believe that the group of people at Wigan, the fans are not going to see just how good that could have been, because it's a broad statement. But having worked with a number of managers, Paul, I believe, has got the potential to manage in the Premier League, and you've seen that there's people gone into the Premier League. Young Anthony Barry go to Chelsea, as well as some of the players. They had that potential just to reach the next level, and that's going to be the frustrating aspect. We're never going to know just how far that could have gone. Well,
I hope I don't frustrate you even further, because the next slide that we'll have a look at now are all the players that have left Wigan, with most recently Josh Windass going to Wednesday, back to Wednesday late last night. Just talk us through some of these players, Chris, and talk to us about, for the ones where the transfer fees have been disclosed, how much of a good deal do you feel some of these clubs have got?
Well, I wish I was in their recruitment, because they've got bargains, in my opinion. I think the frustrating aspect is that, take Anthony Robinson as a prime example, someone who's done fantastic through his career pathway at Everton, that he's gone to Championship on loans, and we think, and at the time, 1.75 million from Everton, is that a lot of money for a fullback? For us, it was a huge amount of money, but we actually did see the potential, and the people that you alluded to who's in the building who can actually develop them further from the coaching aspect, and he went on, and a lot of people were surprised that he had a chance to go to AC Milan, but we weren't. He's an absolute premier elite athlete who wants to get better, and you see that he's now gone for 2 million. Fantastic business by Fulham, but in the last window that was closer to 10 million. And this is the bit I won't be able to understand, is that if you look at right the way through there, and there's actually more still in the building. You've got your Sam Morsy's, Nathan Burns, Lee Evans, still there, and I apologise if I've left anyone. Tom Pearce, who we got from Leeds, who was your next progression for Anthony Robinson. Anthony's gone, he'd have come in, and a youngster underneath that, and that's the frustrating aspect, because with good management from the football club, which there was people in place to do that, I question whether you would have needed this administration, and that's a frustrating aspect, because with staying in the Championship, still holding the value of certain players, and with good player trading, I think you don't understand. It might not have been what everybody wanted to hear, even if it's the worst case scenario. Listen, you've got to do something quite drastic, but I think everybody would agree, if that drastic action had to be taken, the nearly 90 years of Wigan Athletic, for the sake of putting our house in order, so to speak. But it was on track. We weren't living, as I thought, amongst our means. We can't compete with some people in the division. We understood where we could be. So as I said, it's frustrating.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, go on, Tony.
Yeah, Chris, there was a document sent round by the government, sort of signed to petition, and it's reached over 100,000 signatures. A government petition to look into what's happened at Wigan and what's happened at other clubs, and the finality of this. Right, bang, we're into administration, selling the family silver, so to speak. It's got to be wrong, hasn't it? On a lot of, it's got to be wrong for Bury. It's got to be wrong. Back in the day, Darlington went into administration, and the only people that really suffer are the fans and the people who work in that club, and other clubs come and pick off the best players. There's a good 11, isn't there? And even down the bottom, the training ground. So I don't know what can happen. Is there anything that we can say that, from a football point of view, that some good can, we can get better systems? What do you think the answer is to this?
There has to be some way of safeguarding, whether it's a football club or whichever way it's looked at, and it's happening too often now. So it has to be looked at. As I say, it happened once at Bury and another close to sort of my career and heart, but people don't understand that there's people there who, Bury is there, that's the life. Wigan, it is that they're actually, regardless of ourselves, when you go through as players, worrying statistic that a player's actually only had a club for less than, I think it's 287 days now, but it's these people who stay behind. I've been very loyal throughout my career, that I've managed to stay for longer periods, but everybody has a Joan at Bury, or a Tracy at Wigan who's there, and that's the heart. As I say, that's the heartbeat. And these good people have lost their jobs.
Yeah,
that should not happen, in my opinion. It just shouldn't. Whichever way that goes, it's safeguarded, and ultimately the fans, because they've seen it. They've lived, breathe, eat, sleep it. The good, the bad, and the indifferent, and that's what makes you a fan. So whether that's safeguarding, that you have to put funding in to cover things for 12 months until something details, or a longer period, I really don't know. I think that's bigger and tougher questions, and I think we'd be on all day if we alluded to that. But there has to be something to protect the prestige of English football, because it's something we all should be proud of.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. I just want to bring Guy in now. Guy, you might have saw the transfer of Matty Cash from Forest to Villa yesterday. I mean, that's rumoured to be £16 million. You watch a lot of football. You're looking at clubs like Wigan to, as a potential outpost for some of your players as well. You know, how do you value that Anthony to Fulham for £2 million? I mean, how undervalued do you see it as?
I watched a lot of him in regards to the Championship and watching Wigan, because I know the guys there and done a lot of research into their pot of players. I mean, we've left James Weir off on the list at the bottom and went to Brighton. You know, right. David Weir's son, fantastic midfielder. So, you know, there's not just that, but going obviously onto your question, I can never understand how a player can drop from 10 to 2 and still have played, you know, majority of the games and still go and get a Premier League move. So it just looks like even bad business from the administration, because there would have been 4 or 5 clubs in for him, and 2 seems really low for me. When you're dealing with a player like him, I'm right in saying a US international as well now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm right in saying that, aren't I, Brassy?
Yeah.
USA international. So you're looking at a type of unbelievable athleticism, unbelievable up and downer, which everyone wants as a fullback, and, you know, honing his skills still, loads of potential. Cash, I like Cash, 15, 16 million, standard amount of money now for a good Championship player, standard. You know, 20, a 30, a 40 million pound now for an English talent is more so that end of the transfer spectrum. We go into Belgium and reportedly picking out players with 10s and 15s and 20 millions. So there's still value about in the market if you're going to get someone like a Robinson. It's a great bit of business for Fulham, if I'm honest.
I think the trouble, Guy, was we weren't. It's in players' contracts that there's certain kind of clauses if on relegation, and that was one of them. And I think that's where the figure kind of comes down to that we unfortunately, you lose that bargaining chip. Had you kept the Championship status, which we should have done, and we, in my opinion, correctly did do so, that those figures would be different. And as I said, something around about the 6 million, even with some of the youngsters, Alfie Devine going. I think Cedric Kipres.
But again, there's an example of bad management, not from your side, but from probably the EFL. Because how can they then say you ran, I would say, poorly by an owner that they've accepted? You then get relegated, your then clauses go and get activated, and then you lose another bundle of money when it's really an EFL problem for activating that owner in the first place. And I know you can't say certain things. Listen, get better owners in. That's how clubs don't go bust. Get people in who can run places. Get people in who understand football, not just business. Because it's a very, very peculiar mix of business, passion, football, love, all these different things mixed into one pot, not just, you know, system, process, and produce a product and put it out on the field and it makes money. It's not just that, football. So I think people have to look into it a bit more deeply when they're taking over football clubs and understand that, you know what, you might get stung if you don't understand the game as a whole. That's my rant.
Yeah. Good. Chris, I wanted to ask, did obviously the Whelan family had sort of completely moved themselves out of the legalities of the football club? I mean, do you see any scope for any return in that respect? I see Dave's grandson has just been appointed chief exec at Mansfield, but at the same time, obviously, I see he's just sold off the rest of his business as well. Do you think Wigan needs to go back to some sort of local family ownership, or
potentially? Listen, the legacy that he ultimately is the reason why Wigan climbed to the Premier League. It's the Whelan family will always be remembered, but it's a challenge because he's at an age now where he wants to enjoy his retirement, and even sort of David is his grandchild, done wonderful, but he's done fantastic himself now on a personal level. But being if you want to dream that's something that could, he'd come in a knight in shining armour and David would go back in, and it's a bit like you get the band back together, isn't it? But it'd be unfair to put that upon him for all the good that he did. It's with all due respect, this isn't his mess. So it would be an ideal scenario, and I think it is. I genuinely believe, I think the fans are going to have some say in it and moving it forward, and I think that'll be paramount. And guys, right, how you do it and how you do your due diligence, etc. It's got to be extremely strict, and I'm a big advocate that now, even on your recruitment, your scouting, you get qualified, you do certain things. Well, should owners, is there something they should pass? What's this fit and proper test? Is the understanding from that perspective? As I say, they sometimes welcome with open arms, and then this happens, and it shouldn't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
without me
absolutely.
going on a rant, guy.
No, that's don't worry about ranting. It's rant central here, Chris. So don't worry about the fit and proper person test. It's not a test. You know, I've had to go through it a number of times, and it's not a test. It's a tick box exercise.
Hey Ryan, if you can pass
Chris,
it,
running out of time with you. So, well, there you go. There you go. Exactly. Chris, I don't want to miss the opportunity to get some sort of specific knowledge out of you. So I want to know when Paul Cook says leg it, and we're talking about distances and sprint distances. What are the specifics on that for you recruiting for a championship player? What type of distance is covered in the game are you looking for, and what kind of sprint distances are you looking for?
You've not paid me enough to give away the trade secrets. I think what you've got to understand is what was bespoke to you. And that's what I alluded to. That's where everybody's got to come back together as more of a collaborative approach. Understand what it takes to win a game of football. Understand what your each sort of position specific as well. You know, not everyone is the same, and that's the key. And I think the art, certainly in your recruitment, is that understanding of what you've got in the building, what's going on inside. Because if you bring anybody in and the manager doesn't fit into his style, or it doesn't fit what he is after, and he doesn't play him, well, no one wins. You've got an unhappy player sat in the stand. So that's what we, as I say, you broke it down from the start of understanding what's in the building, what each player looks like. And then when you come from the recruitment perspective, is the data analyzes firstly where they're up to and whether that marries up. If there's certain things, you're shortlisted down to look, whether that's via video or live. And then you progress it even further, and you go deeper, and everything from you really need to know what they want to eat, what they want to sleep, how they want to progress, how they see where their life's going to go. How much can you get? And it's an art. And as I say, I'm sure there's people on this now who realise just how much hard work goes into them hard miles. And I genuinely believe, as I say, I took the decision to get my knowledge better. But that's the key. And as I say, as a player, people always often ask, well, how did you come and do your career? As a player, I wasn't the best player, but I wanted to be the best player. Yeah. And I'm no different in recruitment. I won't be the best person in recruitment, or I won't be the best as I progress, but I want to be the best. And that's key, because you can always learn. You've got to constantly keep challenging yourself. Things change very, very quickly. And as you see, even in this pandemic, I know having these kind of webinars, thanks, Guy, is, you've got to quickly change. And it's a fast and furious industry. So that's the challenge.
Chris, we spoke about this briefly when we had our sort of pre-chat the other day. Do you think scouting and recruitment is treated as a discipline in its own right enough, or is it still a space where people can migrate over from coaching or managing or playing too easily?
I think it's easy the migration, and as I say, I think the challenge will be that there's got to be certain, like anything, from a coach and qualifications, and have that passion for it. And again, in the broad scheme of things, where from a monetary perspective is, you're dealing with, we're talking loosely there, like 2 million's nothing. It's for Anthony Robinson. Actually, it's a lot of money, or 10 million, and you're quite flippant. But again, what percentage of your business is actually put into the recruitment arm, or your analysis, or your coach development? And I think that's the key aspect, again, and I'm talking as a global kind of overview of a club, is just how important you see each dynamic. Because some don't think recruitment is important. Some don't think player development is. Some think sometimes, well, if we actually just go out and buy the best players, and it's not one size fits all. And I think even knowing that there's an awful lot of player development pathways and philosophies at each other's club, they all have their own ideas and views. The key is that you stick and you're quite strong to that. So I believe there should be a greater emphasis on the kind of the recruitment arm. But as I say, it's bringing everybody together. That when a decision is made and you sat around the table, you've got an input from the manager, the coaching staff, the academy, because they all got the players who's coming through, your sport medicine department, and your performance analysis, as well as the data guys. So there's a whole mix goes into this now, and I think that's if we don't all buy into that, that's the way forward.
Guys, before we move on, Tony, Guy, do you have any questions for Chris?
Yeah, can I just ask Chris, how close is your working relationship with your manager? Obviously, Paul Cook, your most recent one, but how close do you get with those guys? I mean, is it you see him every single day, or what is it?
You communicate. I think that's the art is the communication. You've got to keep them strong, and at times, I think that's where you've got to get a global overview. And even when you're a scout, you can digress into it, but understand what it's like to be a coach. And I often say it to people in recruitment: find out what it's like to coach, find out what it's like, have a little taste of everything within reason, but specialize obviously in the area. So you've got to. The good thing I had from previous manager experiences, I actually knew what was going on inside his head some days, and it's a lonely place being a manager. Let me tell you, it's and even time at Burnley with Sean Dyche, you respect it, and you know when and when not to sort of speak to things, because he's the gaffer as well. But it's that respect and understanding and what they're after. So I think it's paramount that you have, certainly from a key perspective or in a senior position, that it's very, very tight. But I still believe, and Paul was very, very good at understanding the others. He would touch base, albeit periodically, but even a phone call into some of the scouts, and it's massive, for morale from your perspective, because they've got in at 2 o'clock in the morning, the motorways being shut, etc., and then the gaffer rings them in the morning, just how's it going, this, that, and the other, might pick your brains, how's Chris treating you, etc. But that's fantastic, because they feel a worth, and I think that's key. It's I may be different, and people might be out there shouting and screaming at the screens, but you should be accountable. If you get your signings wrong, look at me. People are too quick to look at managers at times as well, and you work together, and I think that's it. It's all about what happens in the team, and I think that's the key. As I said, don't sit back, oh, that was his signing, don't give me that. Let's get it out on the table. Let's get it, because when we sign somebody, we sign them. Whether that's a success or that's a failure, and you don't get them all right. But again, can you come back, reflect what went wrong? What went wrong there? Did we all go too strong because the manager said he loved them? We're all nodding dogs, or did we all go too strong and everybody's backing me because he's wonderful? Let's. As I said, Stan Turner, I alluded to you. He had a saying, "We all pee in the same pot." That's massive. Big Stan. That was it, kind of band of brothers, and I think Guy had it during a period at Rotherham with them players. You were that tight. That's how it is, and I think recruitment has to be like that as well. You've all got to believe in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Guy, very briefly, have you got any sort of final comment or question to Chris?
No, just what obviously Chris just said there. We were that tight at Rotherham, we ended up pissing on each other's feet. And that's exactly what we were like at Rotherham. Move on quick.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Chris, obviously you're going to stay on for the panel discussion afterwards, but really appreciate your comments there. You've some nice comments on the chat as well. People really appreciating the job that was done at Wigan, and really echoing your thoughts that it's just a shame that the fans won't have got to see what those boys could have done, either for the rest of this of the previous season or indeed next season. So thank you very much for that. Jesper, would you, unless you're having a coffee with Virgil van Dijk, do you want to turn your video on?
Yeah, Tony has to do it, Ryan. So,
okay, Tony.
All right, I can do that. Yep.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm not having coffee with Virgil or Jeannie, unfortunately, but I go for lunch in half an hour, so I hope maybe I will catch it. catch up with them.
Fantastic. So a big couple of games for the Dutch squad now. How are things? Because obviously Koeman now at Barca, so all change again.
Yeah. So a lot of food for thought for all the talk shows, and a lot of names are being speculated on. Yeah, who will be the national head coach? So yeah, right now the assistant coach will be in charge of the 2 games, and yeah, the big search is started. So but I think there are now 2 games in September, 2 games in October. So I don't think that there's a big hurry in appointing a new manager, because the next international games will be, I think, in March or April. So yeah, let's wait and see what will happen.
Very good. Well, great to have you with us today, Jesper. We won't waste any more time. If you could tell obviously everybody listening and watching in today about yourself and of course what SciSports is all about.
Yeah, of course we went twice successfully at your forums and in Liverpool and Manchester, which was really good to also know to understand better the culture in England, but also the way how things works. Also in the lower leagues, in League 1, League 2, because in Holland, we mainly look at the Championship or at the Premier League, but there are of course many more interesting clubs to help. My role, I'm a manager of football at SciSports. So what we try to do, I try to connect with clubs all around the world, from Mexico to Australia and everything in between. And what we try to do to sum it up briefly, we are sort of football manager in real life, so like the game. And what we do is we help clubs finding their next player, or what Chris was mentioning already, is gathering the right information to make the right decision. Because what Chris was also mentioning is that there are a lot of departments who are involved in a decision, sign a player, yes or no, if it's the manager, if it's performance, if it's recruitment, if it's the sporting director itself, if it's medical. So there are a lot of parts and a lot of departments who are involved in the decision, and we try to help, especially on the data scouting side, to help clubs finding the right player and making the right decision. And especially in these times right now where it's difficult to do live scouting because you're not allowed to go to games. Traveling is really hard. Because if you want to go to the UK right now, for myself, I need to be 2 weeks in quarantine together with Boris Johnson. So it's difficult, and then you need to find new creative ways. And we are helping nowadays around 100 organizations. We worked in the past with Wigan. Unfortunately, that stopped. Hopefully, in the future, we can help them grab up again to the Championship, but who knows? But we're working in the UK. We're working with clubs like St Mirren, Leeds United, Norwich, Sheffield. But we are also in other parts of the world working with with all the respect, smaller clubs with smaller budgets and smaller departments, just to help them with one thing: finding the best next player within their criteria, within their needs, within their profiles, to see if we can be of any support.
Jesper, tell us about Memphis Depay. What happened with Memphis Depay?
That is also he wrote it in his book as well, and that is also why we are more and more involved also with agents. Is that Depay came with a request. I think it was in 2018 when he was on the bench at United under Louis van Gaal's squad. And he was unhappy because he wanted to play. He had a good season at PSV Eindhoven, one of the best players in the Eredivisie, but it wasn't a success. So his agent came with a request, we would like to bring him elsewhere. But we have our ideas, and of course, we have our feelings on where he could play, but it's also good to have a sort of objective view based on data. And that is also what it's all about, I think. It's a combination of statistics and data, combine that with your own eyes and your own feelings, and then you can make the best decision possible. And of course, then it could end up wrong in the end, but at least there's a smaller chance. So the risk management that you have done is there. So they came with the request, okay, what, based on the playing style of Depay, what could be a good match with him? And then our models and our algorithms can create an sort of top 5, top 6 teams based on the playing style of that team, matched with Depay. And also Lyon was one of those 6, but also other clubs were on that list, so there were 6 in total. And with that information, the agent went along, and he spoke with 2 or 3 clubs in the end, and Lyon was the perfect match in the end, as it seems right now. But it could also be possible that he said, Lyon, I don't like that city, I don't like France at all. Yeah. But at least based on that report as well, it helped in his decision. It's not because of that report that he made that decision, but it helped in the process. So that's how we try to help agents, clubs, federations in total.
Yeah. What type of data are we talking about? Because obviously there's a lot of generic data that's out there that clubs can access quite readily. What's different about SciSports?
Yeah. So if you look at, you have platforms like Wisecout and Instat, where you can also see amount of crosses, passing accuracy. And what we have in our company, we have a group of consultants, football consultants, but also football scientists. And what they do, they try to add extra intelligence on top of that raw data. So for example, if you look at passing accuracy, I was a midfielder. I had a really high passing accuracy because I played a lot of passes backwards. So they were all safe. But what we try to do is we try to measure every pass that a player gives in a game. How much does that contribute offensively in creating chances or creating goals? So we try to add more extra value to the stats, because let's say if you play with Lionel Messi and you give him short passes and he goes past around 5 or 6 guys and he scored, then you have an assist. But if you give a through pass to let's say a player who doesn't score a lot, but the through pass was really good, but he doesn't score, then it's not an assist, only a successful pass.
Jesper, we've got Lionel Messi's dad here. He wants to know where's Messi's next destination. Can you can you run that through the data?
Yeah, it could be possible. And I think Inter, out of my head, I think Inter and Man City will come very high. But no, of course we could do that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I've been having this conversation quite a long time, and I remember, I'm a Wolves fan, and I had the sort of privilege of watching Robbie Keane when he first became a professional, and he used to get caught offside all the time, and the fans used to absolutely hammer him. But he was also the top goal scorer that season, and he was playing right on the edge. So of course he was offside quite a long time, but he was trying to do something positive a lot. So in data. And I don't know what you think about this, Chris, as well, and you, Guy. There's a lot of sort of false positives going around where good data, what appears good data, in reality is quite bad. Perhaps like the possession stats. I mean, what are your thoughts on data, Chris?
I think that's where he's alluded to. I think it's understanding what it is, because days of old, I used it at the start, and it was only a stat of how many aerial duels or something as basic as that people would win, or possession, what the percentage marks were, 54% against 40%. It hasn't half evolved, and even to the certain matrix of whether a shot's challenged, unchallenged, what that's like. It's the marrying it up, and I agree with where they're at. Is that's where you can bring in your football science, and that being, what's it like when Guy Branson's marking you doing a corner? Well, you actually know that you're actually going to be struggling to get away from him, because that's one of his pluses. I did get away from you twice, guy.
Can't remember the goals, mate. Check out on YouTube, anybody. Find them goals. Can't see them.
Don't check me out on YouTube. That's a whole new era.
We better not go on YouTube, Chris, because the only thing they're going to find, we're not going to mention what they're going to find if they go on YouTube, either, you know.
Well, best not. Well, it keeps me in the wealth I'm accustomed to. But no, alluding back, I think that's where it is, and it's marrying it up, and it's not being a pure blood that I'm an ex-player, etc. Yeah. There's a wealth of good people in football who haven't kicked the ball, but it's that understanding and making them understand, because sometimes you do, you see it. He's never played football, but on the flip side, you also have he thinks he knows everything. But I've got to say, you do understand what it's like. You do understand when someone is gripping you, and I had it at a very, very young age against Italians when they were standing on your toes and nipping you and holding you, and I'm thinking, I'd been marked tightly, but I don't think you would have nipped anybody, guy. But as I say, I was like, what's this? What's going on? You're nipping me. It was, but it's that way of winning, and how you marry that into the science. That's the challenge. But it's keep going, and I'll doff my cap to SciSports. Yes, we can have used them in the past, and I'd use them in the future because you've evolved, and I think you've seen the insight of that. That it is. It's changing, and it's understanding what each matrix should be, and whether it is challenged, whether it's not challenged, whether that's against a lesser team. That's hard sometimes in recruitment, waiting different leagues, but it's slowly getting there, and it is minimising risk.
Guy, I just want to come to you. Obviously, you know, with your role at Leicester as loan manager, you know, I'm presuming you're getting quite a bit of data back about the boys that you've got on loan. And what is it that you like to see from the interpretation of the data that you're receiving about your boys on loan?
Well, I suppose I've been doing it myself now for about 6 years regarding data, because I just think it's massive. Like we've all said, we've all agreed. For me, it's 60-40 now. It used to be 40-60. You know, a lot of the data now is getting really put upon me to break down and understand. So I thought I'd come into the building with some sort of knowledge. So I've gone away and done that. Now I'm looking at Y-Scout, breaking down, you know, where players can be projected to, their pathways, like you said, where can we see this player going to, what data is Y-Scout, Instat, StatBomb, all the different ones that are around yourselves. What are what's the data showing me, and trying to understand it and pack it in a way where, like Brassy says, you know, the same language as Brendan wants to hear. You know, one of the first things that I did when I was loans manager, we had a first meeting with Brendan when he came in as the manager, was trying to understand and ask him questions rather than me present him my knowledge. And I just wanted to ask him questions because I don't want to give him what Claude Puel wanted and how he wanted it packed and how he wanted it presented, to then give it to Brendan and waste an hour of his time because he's got that time slot with me. So rather than do a presentation, say, listen, Brendan, what do you need? How do you want it presented? What stats do you want? You know, and just fine tune it all so he can go through it. And if he looks, which he will, if he looks, like Chris has said, it makes me feel involved. It makes the empathy on me, the feeling of involvement massive. So if he looks, it's broken down into exactly the same language so he can digest it quickly and move on and get going into the first team environment with the loan lads feeding into the first team environment. So I think there's loads of ways you can look at it, but I think it's huge now. If you're not into it, you'll get left behind.
I cannot agree more on that, Ryan, with Guy, what he's telling. And that's also, we are not also presenting to a club, okay, this is the way how you should do it. And we just say, okay, what do you need for a right back? Or what do you need for a left winger or a central midfielder? Okay, this and this and this criteria, under 25, needs to play a good passing game. He needs to be a box-to-box midfielder. He needs to play in these leagues. And because we're not going to change clubs, but clubs has their needs and their criteria. But you only need to provide the context. Because data could be really cool, but without the context, yeah, it's of no use. Because you need to present the right information. What Guy and Chris was telling already, you need to present it in the right way. And if you're looking for a winger who's really good in his crossing, don't come back with wingers who is really good in dribbling, because that's not what the club wants. And that's the same why agents are using us as well, that they want to present the right player to the club, what they are looking for. I think that's really important, that you help the club in the way they want it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely. Tony, do you just want to explain to everybody tuning in what we're going to be doing with Jesper a week today?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jesper. Obviously, it's a really interesting topic. SciSports is a really interesting company. We're going to do a special with SciSports, just myself, Ryan and Jesper, next Thursday, 10:30 kickoff again. It'll probably be about 45 minutes. Jesper's going to share his screen so you can have a good look at the platform. You can ask questions. We're going to interact with the audience, so you can throw players at him or throw needs of clubs at him. So if you're at a club and you want to write back, like we said, you know, give us what your needs are, and we'll do it actually live in the webinar, providing the technology works. But that's next Thursday. It's a free sign up, so I'll be sending out the information just after this webinar. But we look forward to seeing you then, Jesper.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot for
Good
having
stuff.
me.
Thanks,
Today.
Jasper. See you next
Thanks,
Thursday.
Jesper. I'll just leave that screen on just for 10 or 20 more seconds for people to just get your details down.
Yeah.
But enjoy the games.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Hope to see you.
Good stuff. Thanks, Jesper. Great stuff. So let's keep moving on, and let's get over into the panel discussion. And Guy, I want to start with you. Player pathways, so important. You know, what is the point of having an academy system? You know, having under 23, all this type of stuff, if the pathway isn't right for them to become an asset to the first team, to the football club. Obviously, Chris has touched on it about how they were getting some success at Wigan. But it's such a vital part of recruitment and scouting. So we've obviously got this slide up in terms of, you know, how you see the process at Leicester. So do you want to kick this section off by talking us through this slide?
Yeah, well, we did this slide in a virtual tour of our academy with 4 or 5 top clubs coming on, PSV being one of them and Genk being another. We had a discussion with our pathway, how Leicester City and me personally sees a pathway working with the MDTs, obviously the multidiscipline teams. And it's a short presentation, listen, one slide, where what happens regarding our season in regards to the pathway trying to get into the first team. And I based it around Keane Dewsbury Hall, who went to Blackpool, if anyone watched him last season, and now broke into the first team group, which is fantastic, and made his debut. So I started to start with him. He came through at 7 and 8 and only just broke through into the first team group at 21. We gave him an environment, which is the first group of lads. We gave him an environment to excel, where people and players are able to show themselves for who they are as players and people, on and off the pitch. Players start to embrace the process, and obviously Dewsbury all started to do that as an example. He started to take on board what the coaches were saying on and off the pitch, the mentoring, the coaching, the other multidiscipline teams within the building, even, you know, HR, human resources, all the people that he needed, the psychology department, had regular meetings with these kids, the PFA, and he started to build himself as a player within a football club. He also had mentors around him within his peer group, and obviously people around him like good parents, obviously good staff members and mentors, and they're all very much in part of the pathway. So don't ever feel like you're not. You know, when within a football club, you're giving something to these players that's valuable on their journey. And we spoke about it with the Wigan group earlier. You know, these guys have all implemented into these players' moves. And I'm always a bit upset with certain players where you've done a lot of time with them and you know, you text them and say, well done, congratulations on your move. And like Brassy said, we are selfish beasts, but it's also important that they do appreciate some of the stuff that these coaches or these mentors or these scouts have done for them along their journey. And listen, Keane Dewsbury Hall is a fantastic example of a person very well grounded, and we're lucky to have that at Leicester City with some of our lads. You know, he's obviously seen his mentors in Hamza, Harvey Barnes, Chilwell start to develop into the first team. And he started to really develop in an under-21 environment and an under-23 environment, playing the various different levels he obviously got into. His performances have got to excel for the pathway to continue, we know that. But his continuation and the momentum of the way he started has took him to a certain level now. There's going to be bumps in the road, like Hamza's obviously started to break into the first team, which is another midfield slot. Parat obviously signed. We've got Tillemans in the building. So they're the bumps in the road that Keane Dewsbury Hall anticipated and shown resilience to obviously fight them to get in a space where he feels like he can. And we've seen a talent within him continuing to get anywhere near the first team group. So we put him in there and seen how he then developed into that. And you can't really, I don't think, you can't really give these lads, the real chance, the real opportunity until you see the sink or swim element of it. And the sink or swim element of it is literally dropping them in the first team group. Even going back into my own personal pathway, I struggled with that as a player. I struggled to go into the group and be able to cope with the speed of it, the mentality of it, the dressing room, the outside elements of it, what it all looks like on a day-to-day basis. And, it was overwhelming for me at times. But then time after time after time, you start to get used to it, you start to relax. He just went straight into it and developed straight away. And then you start to notice key elements of the psyche of these players that maybe the pathway now is really, we should push them up another level. And we gave him an opportunity, and obviously Brendan gave him an opportunity to play for the first team in a FA Cup match against Brentford, where again, he stepped up to the plate. It didn't faze him. And this is a guy who hadn't been out on loan previously, who hadn't had any first team football previously, and was literally chucked into an FA Cup game against Brentford, who we all know and excelled this season. And then we decided in the MDT, and obviously all the way through this, we've been chatting about him and his name's been mentioned, but we decided on the MDT that, the loan system might be the place for him to go out and excel and hopefully, hit the ground and carry on hitting the ground running as he obviously already had. Hence, he went to Blackpool, 10 appearances before COVID, 4 goals from midfield, and I watched every game and he ran the show. And we're hoping that his psychology carries on into pre-season, which it has luckily, and the characteristics of elite behaviour start to materialise now within the group that he's got to work with on a daily basis, which is the first team group. And his commitment to training is fantastic. His ability to stick to a programme, physical development. And I'm reading this now off the key characteristics of top players, and perfectionism, grit, leadership, mastery, obsessiveness. To have and want to go to training every day and be the best. Like Brassy said, trying his hardest to be the best. Even if you don't get there, still try. And he's got them characteristics. So we're hoping for a big season for him. His pathway hasn't finished. We don't consider his pathway finished until he probably leaves the football club. And that's how I think you should see a player pathway at a football club myself. Thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant insight, Guy. Thank you very much, Chris. How do you relate to that system, and what's your own philosophy on player pathways?
I think the key is Guy, and it's different aspects because obviously that's a Premier League player. So the strategy for ourselves is it wasn't dissimilar at Wigan, but it's kind of alluding to where you get through to and that challenge. And I think what they do have now is that support mechanism, and we're talking about bubbles, and I've always said a player's bubble should be tight, and that support mechanism, everybody, and Guy alluded to, parents, they need educating just how tough it's going to be to make sure they understand the pathway. Coaches, do they understand just where he's going to be? And at some stage along that, it'll be interesting what Guy's take is on this. When did he suddenly understand it? Because I think that's key. When a player suddenly grips it, we all guide it, and I always used to pull players, certainly being a coach, and say, right, this is you in the middle of this. This is your bubble. Who comes into your bubble? You decide. You bring in, do you want your parents inside, or do you want to keep them outside of it? Because my dad's always told me I'm this, that, and the other. You've gone past your dad. Understand what it is, and who's your agent, who you're going to bring him in. Why are you bringing him in? And what you find is, from the characteristics that Guy's talked about, the player, the selfish animal, and it's probably the wrong term in some respects, but you actually think, right, this is what I need. And then they start challenging you. And trust me, I think the best ones when they come and say, why are we doing that? Why are you asking me to do this? And some might think it's being a smart ass. Well, it isn't. He's actually saying, well, Brassy, why do you want me to come inside? Why do you want me to do this at that stage? And then they challenge you. And you, trust me, as a coach, you've got to be able to give them the answers. And the actual pathway, it's interesting seeing he's broke into the first team. He's played in the first team, yet he's still gone out on loan. That's a challenge for the kid as well, whether he's actually looked at it and thought, oh, no, man, they're in the first team here. But the manager's sending me out, or guys, he's speaking to me. And be interesting whether he even challenged that, because judged by his performances for Blackpool, he's just gone there, took the bull by the horns, being the best player, and just thought, right, this is me. This is my next challenge. And I'm sure he's come back pre-season, wanted to be at the front on the running, wanted to play, asking the manager, am I getting any minutes in pre-season? They start pushing you as much as you've pushed them, and that's where they'll continue. So it's that constant challenging. The most worst thing you can ever do in football is be comfortable. The second you're comfortable, we're packed in.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of questions for you there, Guy. One, and I think it's a really interesting question, 'cause it's something that I'm interested in as well, Chris. At what point did the penny drop, and did he really buy into the pathway, the process, and how he needed to be? And then the second question, what was his personal reaction to you telling him that he's gone from playing for the first team against Brentford in the FA Cup, and now he's off to Blackpool?
It's keeping and being transparent with the lad. I think we've had so many discussions with Keane about keeping him in the building and making him understand that it's going to take him a lot longer because of the size and the stature of the boy, and plus, a lot of people liking him in the building. He can hold a training session with the ball. He can keep the ball well. He can keep possession for the first team in a practice match. He can keep possession for the 23. All these positive elements you want as a positive modern footballer, this kid has. So we was never in a rush to get him out of the building to get him first team experience. It was always how can we make him better with every opportunity. And I think the fourth, I actually took a long time building this, so I'm quite pleased you're asking me questions on it. But the last time I did a presentation, they weren't really that bothered about how long it took me to put these pictures in place. But with the fourth picture, so you've obviously using the ticks, and with the fourth picture, he's celebrating with the guys. I think there was a time where he's gone from being really focused, just facing the ball like he can in the third picture, to really everybody buying into him. And he must have been about 19, 20, and I've been in the building 3 years now, and going and doing a lot of work with the 23s and training and coaching, and then obviously going off the pitch and being the mentor and the loans manager like I'm doing now. We had conversations, and he already played something like 70 times in the 23s, which could be make or break again, for a kid. And he just kept striving to go forward. I need more. I want to go out on loan. And we're going, look, you train with Claude. Claude likes you. Where do you want to go? And he's going, well, look at all these different people in front of me now. They're signing play. I'm going, yeah, but see it as platform. See it as the next level. See it as level 2, level 3, level 4. Can you get to that stage? Can you get to the stage? And ask yourself questions now. You're that old. You can ask yourself questions. Am I going to prove myself? Can I go over to my mum as a first team player? And that's a big influence on him, his mum. So we would have conversations with her within the academy setup, in front of obviously the staff. She'd ask us questions. He'd ask questions with his mum. And we just incorporate everyone, be transparent. I think one of the big points, be transparent with his pathway. And again, I'm using him as an example because I've seen the pathway for the last 18 months, 2 years. And it's very different for every player, obviously. Yeah. It's me telling everyone that, and you should know that. It's very different for every player because there's all different levels they'll get to, and some of them, unfortunately, will stop. They can't get to the next level. And that's not the player's fault. That's just the level he's at. I was one of them players. Could I have got an Excel to the Premier League? No. Could I get to the Championship? Yes. It's just one of them things, and your ability can take you so far, but then the mental aspects are the added extra, and he has them added extra. So going to the other question about what was the mental state of the boy when he's telling him that he's got an opportunity to go out on loan, he drank it. Boom, I'll take that. I'll have some of that, and wanted to go and play, wanted to go and prove to Brendan Rodgers that he wants to be a footballer at Leicester City, and if his pathway's going out on loan first, so be it. And we never had a question or a problem. Or I was in Blackpool quite a lot with him and spent a couple of coffees at the stadium, obviously the ground where the hotel is, and we had many conversations about what are you doing this game, what's going to happen the next game, where are we going the next week. And it was week by week, even day by day sometimes, you know, you're talking to him going, you know, that's fantastic last night. Now what? Well, I'm a recovering guy. I'm in the gym. I'm doing my work. I'm doing my walk down. I'm doing me, you know, my foam roller. And I'm like, you know, Thursday, Friday going to game. Yeah, we've prepared great. Looking forward to Saturday travelling. I'm going to go home. And it's understanding the mentality of the boy, telling me that he's doing this, this and this. And I know they're key characteristics to be a top player. You know, regardless of what level I played at, key characteristics are key characteristics. You're probably missing them if you're not a key player. So you can really see them when you ain't got them. And, you know, he's got a lot of them.
Yeah, Tony, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you know, from an agent's perspective, you know, an agent wants their player to go and play games and all that type of stuff. So, you know, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it's nice to see the pathway that guys illustrated, and it's from my perspective, I think it's so important that the players know if they're playing 23s football, the championship. The top clubs in the championship is a long way up, and Leicester City in the Premier League is even further up from the games that they're playing in the 23s. So from my perspective, you will get some lads who just absolutely smash it in the 23s and can jump straight into those first team groups. But really, for most of them, it's going to be a loan, and they've got to understand what that loan means. That loan means it's a chance for you to do well. You know, if the lad we're talking about goes on loan, he plays 3 or 4 games, he doesn't do so well, the manager doesn't trust him, he won't be coming back and expecting to be in the first team squad, will he? He'll probably have to do another loan. But obviously it's gone well for the example that we're using today. But as long as the player understands where he is and how far he is away, and obviously, you know, they'll play Carabao Cup, or was it FA Cup against Brentford? I don't know, but I was at that match actually, but I didn't really. I was watching other players, but as long as the player understands what the loan's for, and to be perfectly honest, if it's a player that hasn't been doing so well and he gets a loan maybe further down, he's fighting for his career, isn't he? He's fighting for a contract at that club before he gets released. They don't always work, Tony.
I think Guy's in a position which I think is fantastic, that it's someone like Guy who understands that, who can mentor him, who knows what he's going through, who is challenging him and checking every characteristic every time. Is it good or bad? Even when it's a failure. Daniel James had a loan spell where it actually didn't work out. Then he was nearly off the Leeds. It didn't work out. He's at Man United now. So somewhere along the pathway, you've got to doff your hat to them because they got it right and they kept him on his journey. Each one's different. But even if you look at the makeup, and I don't know if you've had the chance to see a Guy with what the FA has done on the insights of the first volume of how an England player looks and what's happened.
Yeah, we watched it for the loans manager's position.
Yeah. You know, Kate Bayek is going, and the loans that they've done is unbelievable. You look at them all. You did just go on the keeper, Nick Pope, who we worked with. He was gone to Bury, and he's gone all the way through. And his loan strategy is fantastic of what they've done because they've tasted it. And you've seen it, guy. What's he done? Has he embraced it? Has he thought, I'm coming here and I'm from Leicester? He won't have done all that. You'll have seen it. You'll have checked and challenged everything. And it's paramount because to be an elite, and we are talking the elite here, Guy, and that's the key, is you understand what it gets there. Don't disrespect what you've done. Kevin Ball said it to me a long time ago, don't disrespect your careers, because you don't actually, until we reflect upon it and think, well, crikey, we played an amount of games. How many don't play it? How many don't make it? You know, sadly, we're at that business end as well, where you see the disappointment. Chris, we're the fortunate ones.
But Chris, it's the same for clubs at League Two, League One. You know, they might be sending their players down to the National League North, and it's that same journey, preparing them for the big stuff, preparing them for the league debuts, preparing them to be in front of a crowd. And I think that's, you know, I'm a big fan of the loan system if it's done for the right reasons. You know, if you're trying to develop the players and you send them to the right clubs. Absolutely.
It has to be part of your recruitment strategy as well. So I've spoke with Guy on certain players as well, and it's fitting it in, and he's understood where he would fit in, whether it's at Wigan. He knew what the manager was, he knew what we would try and do with him, and you'd have to present to it. No different. The guy will present to it, this is our player. You've got to present to them, and I think it's that understanding. And we brought in Leon Balogun. It was fantastic, and sadly we didn't get the opportunity to sign him, but we had it not gone. But we needed an experienced defender. Who would have just held it together. There was an unbelievable amount of good youngsters around it, but just that calmness that he brought, that is elite performer, that he's Premier League experience. It wasn't part of the recruitment strategy to bring a 31-year-old, albeit short term, but that actual time and moment in the transfer window, it was exactly just what we needed. And if you see the results since he came in, it was fabulous. So truly, as part of the pathway, the loan strategy is huge when that time is right, Guy. It really is.
Just a final comment from me, because that's what I like to do. How vital to an effective player pathway, Guy, is the fact that the club is actually really settled. It's got clearly excellent, stable ownership. It's been doing well for quite a few seasons now, and obviously there's no dramatics at Leicester, is there? So does that stability in the club just give the player pathways a better chance as well?
Yeah, in respect to dramatics, obviously we lost the chairman. Obviously real testing time for everybody at the football club, and in regards to the football club before the ownership came in, which has been unbelievable for the football club and the city, you've got and also a very stable academy. And I believe, and this is my own opinion, you should have pillars within the football club that have been there years, and you can go back to these pillars within the community of the football club and speak to them about the history and about the identity, and then the new pillar comes in and maybe stays 5-6 years and adds to the strength of the football club. Because quick turnover of ownership, quick turnover of manager, quick turnover of academy manager is only going to leave disarray for me. And coming back into Leicester, where I've been in as a player, I've been a coach in 2008, where I did my B licence with, going, to be fair, to Lillyshaw with Brassey and finishing it off. But I was already at Leicester doing it within the academy, seeing Dewsbury Hall as an 8 and 9-year-old come through the system, Hamza and Harvey. So I'm hoping within the 3 years I've done, I can do another 3 years, I become a pillar. And I think that's, you've got to aim to have pillars around the football club and be stable and be a place where you can adapt and change to certain massive shockwaves like the chairman, and massive shockwaves like the disarray of a I would say an administration like that what nearly went into years ago. And the pillars within the football club held it together, and they're still there now, supporting the football club's new ownership, the new chairman obviously taking over from the same family, but the pillars are still there supporting them and taking them forward into the new era.
And I can only imagine that it was in bed for 9 o'clock with a hot chocolate when you did your UEFA B at Lillyshaw.
I think we played cards, didn't we? I think we played cards a lot. I think Brassey pulled out them dodgy aces all the time. Them chasey aces.
I think the time when it was cards, it was Vanikulu. It was a rehab. It was one of the rehab times. Can you not remember Leslie Vanikulu, the big
rugby the rugby player, Bradford Bulls.
We thought we were.
He kept winning. We just kept letting him win, didn't we? We just kept letting him win. He was about 17 stone and could run the 100 in 12 seconds, and he just kept going to the bar dead quick and coming back with beers.
Even tag team, and we couldn't do him, Guy. We were all right.
Oh,
just kept giving us his fivers on Chasey Ace.
It's important that he that pillars is right, but also once you get someone, and this is something I realised in the academy, if you get someone who specialises in something, keep them in that position. A good young coach is fantastic, but you shouldn't be seeing them scrambling. And I want to be the 18s coach. I want to be the 23s. I want to be a first team manager.
Yeah, no, be the best at that section.
And if you are, and we had it in recruitment, Kenny Williams. Look at what's come through at our academy. it's unbelievable when you look at the tick list and that's coming through, and it's kind of, can he keep in that system? And I'm sure there might have been times you're like, oh, can I help you out a bit more, Chris? No, actually, you're thinking good at what you do. You're the best, one of the best I've seen. Stay in there, specialise in it.
Can I ask a question to the panel? You know, what always baffles me in regards to, we talk about player recruitment, you know, staff recruitment, talent ID of staff, you know, what you're mentioning there, Chris. You know, Kenny Williams, I'm doing my talent ID 3 with the FA with Kenny, doing me 4 next year. And you're listening to Kenny, and you know, he's coming out of all these nuggets of information, experienced guys. You know, it's not fair, I don't think, as now I've come from one side and I'm in the other side now, and I've been in the other side a while now, to see the talent ID of staff members going into the building and clubs not cherry picking that. So you've got obviously Nick, Chadwick, you know, Rioch, obviously Wigan, yourself. You've got a long list of pedigree players coming through the system, through Kenny Williams' eye and from scouting. Why aren't clubs going into that pot of staff now and going, hold on a minute, we're going to just go into administration, we'll take him for our academy, or we'll take him for our units, or we'll, you know, that makes perfect sense. You've had a successful period of turning over a profit for a football club that's sustained itself in the Championship. Yes, it's gone through administration because of obviously whatever the management of the entire beast is. And then, you know, now go and cherry pick the best people. Yourself, Brasser, Kenner, you know, obviously Cook is going to be there for a bit longer. And all the other staff members like Nick, Chadwick and Rioch should be prime candidates for up and coming Cat 1 clubs to take to earn a profit in the future. Again, that's my take.
Well, I'm sure you're hoping that is going to be the case, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when the interview is at Leicester.
Yeah, well, you'll probably take my job, so I'm all panicky.
You're a shoo-in if guys on the panel anyway, so that's a good thing.
I think it's key, but I think that alludes to probably even your next level when you go into your sporting director kind of thing. That's key. One of their roles, Guy. I think that's where you suddenly understand where people are, and the courses are fantastic for that, because you think he's all right, or you learn something from an older member or someone, or understand why they don't like data, understand why that gut instinct is still a place in football, and marrying it up. But it is alluding to like a sporting director. They should actually be looking, well, he's a good coach, or he's a good loan manager. Quite me, look at that success he's had. He's good at what he's done. It's that way of looking, and that's recruitment, isn't it? It's no different. It's just on a different level. So
absolutely,
we'll set that up, Guy.
Very good. Right, let's use the rest of the time to get through some of the questions that are out there. And Chris, I'll put this one to you first. Adrian asks, how do you feel the second transfer window of the season, next season or this season, however you want to call it, will be affected by the disruption to the summer 2020 window that we're in now? Comparing to previous January windows, how do you envisage that it might look in terms of expenditure and type of signings?
I think it'll be, personally, I think there'll be more business, because as this is, nobody knows where we are. I don't actually think we'll be out of it come January. So it still will be quiet, as we've alluded to, and whether people can get into games and do as much due diligence as they would like. But it will be different, and I think people are just a little bit reluctant at this moment for obvious reasons, because no one knows what the horizon look like. No one actually knows when crowds come back. So the financial aspect, the fiscal sort of side of it, will have an effect come January, and I think then the scramble could happen a little bit more. You could find more business if it has settled down, but genuinely I think we're looking at 12 months to just everything just sort of find its feet again. I think the following summer window we will have the new normal. It won't be normal, it'll be the new normal, but it'll be interesting just how much even in the scramble to the end. And I think the fact that the season starts and it doesn't shut domestically until October the 15th is there will be scramble. Teams do come out, they'll lose the first 4 games, and you will still have it's panic. People come off the page. Dangerous, but it will happen.
So, I mean, Tony, you're obviously at the coalface of it in terms of, obviously being an agent, trying to work with players here and now. Does the reality mirror what Chris is alluding to there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the championship has been really, really quiet so far. It's been obviously there's a lot of players gone from Wigan into championship clubs, and people have seen the fire sale. And there was a couple of youngsters that were mentioned on the chat that we didn't show in the screen. But clubs still need players. Clubs still need to have the squads. I think we are going to get more academy players playing and making up squads. I actually think January is probably going to be quiet because it's such a long window, this one. The international window finishes on the 5th. We've got an extension for the domestic England market. So players who aren't playing in the Premier League squads or haven't been picked in the Premier League squads, who the first matches they're not even on the team sheet, they'll be looking to get out. So I think it's going to be quiet in January. I think it's going to be quiet all round. Obviously the Premier League, they've still got the money to spend, and we've seen some big signings already from the likes of Man City and what have you. And obviously Leeds have gone quite strong into the window in terms of getting promoted. They've gone quite hard in terms of signing players and putting money down for them. So, I think the picture in the Championship is going to be, it's sort of a reboot. You've got to look at yourself and go, hang on, the finances aren't here, the crowds aren't back yet. Let's just be ultra cautious the whole of this year.
Just maybe one final question. David makes a sort of observation / question. Great. David says, great to see some investment in Scottish football despite these difficult times, with the acquisition of Dunfermline by a German consultant. As you know, there are lots of opportunities up there anymore. Yes, David. It was a sort of friend of the forum, friend of mine, Tom Markham, who's acted as the conduit in between the consortium and the club there. Obviously, my understanding is they've took a small percentage. That's going to be up to 40% in a period of time, with then the opportunity to take the whole of the club. But I'm very bullish about Scottish football, actually, mainly because it's obviously had such a prolonged, difficult time. All of the clubs are pretty much open for financial help and investment. I was involved in just a few sort of early bits of due diligence on a couple of SPL clubs during the summer. But Tony, I know we've spoken about it before of that there are good opportunities in Scotland. I go the opposite way, Ryan. I just think in these times of uncertainty, unless you're going to get an absolute bargain, which there will be bargains out there, but there's clubs that, there will be.
For me, this is not the time to be investing in a football club. We need to get a little bit of clarity on what the budget's going to be looking like in the next year. I think Chris is right. The new normal probably won't happen until next season, really. This is going to be, I think, watching from the sidelines, keeping your powder dry, and then maybe towards the end of the season, if you're looking to buy a club, then for me, that would be the time to strike. And obviously, you'll know by then that the team's either safe in their league or potentially getting promoted. So for me, I think it's a case of just sitting tight at this moment.
Good stuff. Guys, we've come to time. I've really enjoyed the last 90 minutes. Some great comments as well from the good numbers that we've had on today as well. Chris, really a huge amount of thanks really for your level of candid honesty and obviously the experience that you've gone through over the past few weeks. I'm absolutely certain, as Guy alluded to, people out there do recognise the work that has gone on at Wigan, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you back in at a club very shortly. And obviously, we very much hope to see you on the Football Transfer Forum again in the future. So thank you for your time this morning.
No worries. Cheers, Ryan. Cheers, fellas.
Cheers, Chris.
Guy, thank you for your input as always. Obviously, big few weeks at Leicester now in the build-up to the start of the new season. So good luck with that. Tony, as always, the final word goes to you.
Yeah, it was just really, listen guys, thanks, really engaged with that. I mean, 90 minutes has flown by for me, so appreciate that so much. Just on the football transfer forum, we've been sort of delaying, these webinars were supposed to be warm-ups to the live event. I can't really, in all honesty, see the live event happening this year, so probably what I'm going to do is we'll refund everyone's who bought tickets for, it was supposed to be the 1st of May, we'll refund everyone. We'll keep our just keep the webinars going right through to Christmas, and then we look to probably get a live event in April, May time, which is the normal sort of summer transfer window, pre-summer transfer window for next summer. So unfortunately, you've got to stick with us in the webinars. So you know, hopefully you'll tune in next time. And obviously we've got SciSports in a week's time that you're welcome to come along to. And yeah, hope to see you then.
Great stuff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.